personal history and the history of his people. And part of that hard-bittenness comes out
into San Jose, and whether San Jose is a little bit out away from town and a slightly different visita on this, I'm not real sure. We'll ask Mark see if he knows. But it's one of those very confusing.
Is this right for I will be tomorrow?
Yes, it is.
Is it set up?
Yeah, no. What we're going to do. My name is Tom Peterson, and I'm the director of the Southern Arizona Division of the Arizona Historical Society.
And you're doing a wonderful job for us. Thank you very much.
Oh, and all I can say is that we are so delighted to have the descendants of Sam and Atanasia Hughes as our friends and guests. We really are happy to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Along the northern frontier of New Spain. Beyond this line lay those Aboriginal inhabitants, especially the Apache, who not only resisted Spanish dominations of lands they viewed as their own, but who had forced the Spaniards to defend those areas they had previously subdued. For 6 years, between 1771 and 1776, O'Connor aggressively confronted the Apaches and other native peoples. He crisscrossed the region from East Texas to the Gulf of California, building forts, reforming, disciplining, and equipping the frontier troopers, and launching a series of massive campaigns against numerous Apache bands. By January of 1777, he had completed the formation of the Presidial Cordon and had begun the implementation of the aggressive policies that would characterize Spanish-Apache relations for the subsequent decade, and in reality much longer. While O'Connor's role as Commandant Inspector has been studied to a certain extent by historians, his life and career, how he actually came to America and the northern frontier, have not received like attention. And it is thus somewhat ironic that while Don Hugo O'Connor is one of the most recognizable names in Spanish borderland studies, the antecedents of the man himself remain obscure. So we're going to go back a little bit and we're going to talk about where he comes from. Well, he's not Hugo O'Connor. He is Hugh O'Connor, and he was born in Dublin in 1734, and he was the second son of Daniel O'Connor and Margaret Ryan. And with his 2 brothers and 3 sisters, he grew up in relative wealth for the time, given the nature. His family was known as O'Connor Don, or O'Connor the Browns. The O'Connor Don were the titular descendants of the last High King of Ireland, a man by the name of Roderick O'Connor, and they claimed this sense of Irish nobility. And they could claim, so it was said, most likely mythical, they could claim ancestors back to the days of St. Patrick. Unfortunately for O'Connor, he had 2 things going for him being born in Ireland. One is he was Irish, and the second was that he was Catholic. And the reason for that is Ireland wasn't controlled by the Irish or the Catholics. Ireland was controlled by the English and the Protestants. Since the 1400s, the English crown had sought to control Ireland. They had waged incessant wars against the numerous divided Irish tribal lords. The Reformation of the 16th century added the bitterness of religious bigotry to the political and ethnic hatreds. And gradually the English armies killed or exiled the Irish lords, while plantations, they were called, of English and Scottish Protestant settlers dispossessed the common people of their land. And during this period, the O'Connor Dons vainly tried to maintain their ancient Celtic heritage and their Catholic faith. But in the face of fierce English persecution, the family was stripped of most of its land and power. So he found himself in the unenviable position of being the second son of a Catholic noble family, which basically meant he could do nothing in Ireland. By the 1700s, most of the Catholic Irish had looked for their savior in an English king by the name of James II. I'm going to give you a little English history here. James II, whose father was Charles I, the guy that got his head cut off by Oliver Cromwell. James II succeeded his brother, who was named Charles II, in approximately 1688. However, 1605, excuse me. However, James also had a problem in that he converted to Catholicism. And the English were very, very virulent anti-Catholics, and they staged a revolution. And they kicked him out, and they brought in a Protestant king with James's Protestant daughter, and these are the kings William and the Queen Mary, William and Mary, for which the college in Virginia is named for. And they were Catholic, and that's all the English cared about. However, to the Catholics in Ireland, the hope that James Stuart, James II of Scotland, would become king, they hoped that he might, if he was allowed to regain his throne, might be able to restore some of their privileges and their rights. And so they sought to restore him to the English throne. And they were called Jacobites, these followers of James, because James in Latin is Jacobus, Jacobite, Jacobites, followers of James. Okay? So the Irish Catholics tended to support James Stuart in his attempt to regain the English throne. And this gets into, again, a little bit too much of English history, but for those of you who are interested, James's grandson is Bonnie Prince Charlie, okay, who tries to lead a revolt in Scotland in the 1700s to regain the Scottish throne. The problem for the Catholics in Ireland and Scotland and England is that they lose the war. And so while James and his descendants are de jure kings of Great Britain, by law, kings of Great Britain, Ireland, and Scotland, de facto they have been replaced. And they begin to try to find support in Europe, in the courts of France and Spain, who are the two Catholic powers and rivals of England. So in France and Spain, you find throughout the 1700s large numbers of Irish and Scottish and a few English refugees who are political and religious people who have been persecuted in their homelands. And they go to France and to Spain and form military units, regiments, in the service of the King of France and in the service of the King of Spain, in the hope that someday the Catholic powers will strike a blow for their freedom and liberate Ireland and bring the Stuarts back, bring the descendants of James Stuart back. And these Jacobite regiments, as they are called, are scattered throughout the French and Spanish army. So this is the antecedents that Hugo O'Connor is going to take advantage of. As a young man of Catholic upbringing, he is subject to what in Ireland are known as the penal laws. These were systems of discriminatory laws passed against all Catholics, designed essentially to keep them in servitude to the English Protestant majority. This is a period in Irish history known as the Protestant ascendancy. And what happens is essentially they begin to pass these laws both against the church and against the common people. So for example, if you're an Englishman, or excuse me, if you're an Irishman like Hugo O'Connor, a young man with well-educated and has some ideas that he will move up in life, he cannot become a lawyer. He cannot become any of the mechanical trades. He cannot, by law, serve in them. He cannot own property in excess of 100 pounds, which is very low level. He can't own a horse. He can't own arms. He can't own his own land. If he's a Protestant, he could, but if he's a Catholic, he can't. And the reason for these penal laws is basically to turn the people of Ireland into serfs. Okay? The result is that by 1775, although the Catholic population of Ireland is 95% of the population, they own only 2% of the land. Okay? So what happens if you're a young landowner? Well, you go, as the Irish say, over the water. Okay? You have to go out of your country to seek your fortune elsewhere. Usually either as a merchant, but most often in the career of arms. And there is throughout the 18th century an exodus of several 100,000 young men. Remember, at this time, Ireland only has a population of about 2 million people. So if you have literally 100 or 200,000 young men going out every year, there's not a lot of eligible bachelors around for the young ladies in Ireland, because they're all going over the water. And they're going to fight for France and Spain. And in Celtic, they're known as Nagia na Fiadain, which means the wild geese. And it is this path, then, that in the wild geese, to serve a foreign prince, that Hugo O'Connor takes at the age of 17. Now, there had been, as I said, numerous Irish regiments in both the French and Spanish armies, and we know what Hugo, or Hugh as he was called, was going to do. He received a message from his uncle, who was a man by the name of Daniel O'Connor, who was then currently a captain in the French service. And he was going to make arrangements for Hugo O'Connor to escape, as it were. Now, this is not the first time that a member of O'Connor's family had gone over the water. Hughes' great-grandfather, a man by the name of Daniel O'Connor, had gone into exile and fought for the Spanish army in the days of Cromwell in the 1650s. And there is a portrait that has been circulated around Tucson for the last several years purporting to be Hugo O'Connor. It's probably not him. It's probably his great-grandfather Daniel, judging by the 17th century look of the outfit. He was known as the Spanish O'Connor, so that's probably that guy. Be that as it may, we know that in the fall of 1751, Hugh left his family home in Clonalis, County Roscommon, to seek his destiny. A record of his flight is found in the correspondence of the renowned Irish antiquarian and nationalist Charles O'Connor of Ballinagary, who writes in a letter dated November 17th to his son that Captain Thomas O'Connor wrote in favor of Mr. Hugh O'Connor, who is with me this night, and sets off Wednesday next for Dublin to his friends in Spain. Managing to sneak out of Dublin, probably under a false pretext, because to go to serve in a foreign country was a capital offense. If an Irishman was caught going to fight for France and Spain, the English would kill him. So it was a dangerous move. But he manages to get out and maintains contact, or establishes contact with his second cousin, Alexander O'Reilly, who is at the time the third in command of an Irish regiment in Spain, an Irish regiment known as Hibernia, as he is known as Alejandro O'Reilly, who will go on to become one of the more famous Spanish generals in the 18th century. And O'Connor meets up with O'Reilly, and O'Reilly very quickly, showing the familial favoritism that is common in these Irish regiments, has his young second cousin appointed a cadet in the regiment, and very soon then Hugo O'Connor's in Spanish we'll call him, enters into the career of arms. O'Reilly was later to write in his correspondence with his relationship of O'Connor that I feel him to be like my own son.